right, Strong Dads. Hey, this is an opportunity for you to listen in to a show that I did with the author and executive coach, Cory Carlson. Cory came from the corporate world, and after climbing the ladder and having lots of success in the corporate world, definitely a driven man, he started to look around and see just his dissatisfaction in life, trying to figure out just where he fit in and where his struggles were coming from, and noticing also that his family just was not doing well. His marriage was not doing well. And Cory kind of had an awakening, and that awakening involved a relationship with Jesus Christ. The idea that he began to identify differently instead of identifying as just a leader in the corporate world or somebody who could just really do a fantastic job in the corporate setting. He started to realize that stuff was kind of temporary and just didn't carry him through life. And he started to realize that if we're going to have an identity, we better identify in something that doesn't change. Jobs change, money changes, status changes. But the fact that you are a son or child of God, that doesn't ever change. The fact that you're a father, that doesn't ever change. He began to search out looking for more permanence in his identity, and that was through Jesus Christ. And when he did that, it completely began to change exactly how he'd go about life. And so you got to listen to the story. I'm sure even whether you're in the corporate world or not, you're going to be able to connect to Cory's message. He's just a great speaker, great with his words, very thoughtful. And so you got to listen. And, at the end of this show, if you have an interest, tap into his stuff. You can get on his website at CoryMCarlson.com, and you can see all the different offerings that he has. So tune in. This is a great show. You strong dads out there that are digging through the corporate world and just trying to work, and sometimes wondering where it's going to get you. So great show. Got to listen, strong dads. Strong Dads would like to welcome Casey's Outdoor Solutions as a new sponsor to our podcast. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home. Welcome to Strong Dads. Hey, this is Merle Hutchinson. We have got some good stuff coming to you today. We have a special guest on our show. Have you ever felt like your life is just out of balance and that you're winning in one area and then you're losing in another area? You just can't quite get it together. Well, today we have a guest who's going to help us kind of seek that balance and figure that out. And it wasn't through just a textbook. He actually had some things out of balance himself. And so today we're going to figure out how he got it back together and how he started winning. Today we'd like to welcome the author, Cory Carlson, author of Win at Home First. Cory, how are you doing today?
Hutch, I'm great. Thank you very much for having me. I look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, this will be good. And, here at Strong Dads, our whole purpose here is to really get the conversation about dads and families back to the top of the discussion table. I came through working in schools. I was a elementary school counselor for the last 20 years of my life and had the opportunity to retire out of that and started, my wife and I started the ministry Rock Solid Families, where we do marriage and family coaching. And specifically, I kind of have a side branch of that where and like I said, in the last 20 years, really saw dads not doing a good job. Not all dads, right? A lot of dads do a fantastic job, but way too many dads were falling short and usually came at the expense of their family. And I was directly involved with that because I was the one at school. I was helping the teachers deal with the kids who were dealing with dad who was being a jerk or dad who was doing whatever he was doing. And so I got, as I've described many times in my shows, I got an angry passion to go out and grab dads and say, hey, we need you. Stop doing this stuff. And so when I came across your work, you're exactly the kind of guy that I was like, man, that is a good dude. That's a good dude, but he's not good if he's not doing good to his family. And so when I started to read some of your stuff, I was like, I need to talk to Cory. I need to see, because you're in a slightly different world. I was in the education world and just dealing with families' day-to-day living. You were from more of the corporate world. So tell me a little bit more about where you come from and what you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, thanks for the intro. And as we'll talk today, trying to be that good dude. I mean, it takes work. It takes intentionality. Which would be a key point of what we talk about for what it takes to be a strong dad is that intentionality to be present. So yeah, my story on the quick side of it, because like you said, I am corporate. I was a corporate guy. I thought that was my path for life. Got a civil engineering degree and started in the engineering world in Kansas City, got promoted, moved to Denver where I managed a bunch of people and a territory, got promoted, moved to Cincinnati, which is where I live now. And ended up.
Is that a promotion to move to Cincinnati from Colorado?
It was, yeah, believe it or not. It was a promotion. And yeah, that's hilarious. But actually, that was part of the deal where I went there thinking it was just going to be a stop. And then I'd go back out into another city or another part of the country to lead. And so when my wife and I came, we have no family in the Cincinnati area. Matter of fact, all of our family pretty much is in Missouri and in Colorado. And so when I got here, it was kind of this whole thought of, hey, we're going to just be here for a little bit, then go. Well, I was a VP of a big division, and I needed help. At the end of the day, I was starting to take my identity to work. And if I had a good month, I thought I was the man. If I had a bad month, I thought I was going to get fired. My work-life balance was, getting messed up. I was skipping workouts. I was laptop kind of always open at home and phone always in my hand. And I knew something wasn't right. I knew it wasn't sustainable. At the same time, I'm listening to all these podcasts, reading all these books, just trying to soak up all this information, but there wasn't a change. So I ended up hiring, and before I did that, I talked to my boss who I liked, and I said, hey, Tom, what are you doing? I need help, but we're traveling different parts of the country every week. And he's like, hey, get an executive coach. I've always used one. And so I was like, well, I wish you would have told me this sooner. Right. But anyways, I did. I found one that was also faith-based, which I was on a big faith journey. And this executive coach who I still talk to this day, and we're talking about, what is that, 8 years later? It was, integrating my faith, a holistic, in order to lead well, you first got to lead yourself first, and then your family, and then your work. And so I just started that, and I saw my life start to change. I became a better father, a better husband, a better leader. I took one more corporate move where I was president of sales for a national contractor. And I had 30 sales guys throughout the country. And these were the things I was talking to them about. And what I ended up seeing, Hutch, was it started to become purpose over paycheck. They started to be intentional in their home. They started to do some of the other things we may talk about today. And not only did they improve, so did our EBITDA or our profitability.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to do this for a living. So 4 years ago, I left to begin the process of, instead of just helping these 30 folks, I want to go help 300, 3,000, 3 million.
Right.
And just see where it goes. So that was the journey. And so I thought I was going to be that corporate guy for life.
Yeah. Wow. So, I think it is really cool to always see the process that people go through. Sometimes I get a kick out of seeing kids going to entrepreneurial school, So like when I was back in college, there was no such program because entrepreneurs were something that were kind of born, right? And then they started a pathway and they just started versus being trained to do. And so it's kind of interesting, like you would have never guessed 25 years ago, I'm going to be a coach that helps people be better. Right. I mean, that wasn't what you went to school for. And
Yeah.
so the path that you're on has, allowed you to arrive at this. So I think that's always a cool statement that, young guys especially get in this idea of this is what I want to be for life. And when you finally kind of surrender some of that and let life talk to you a little bit, it's kind of amazing sometimes where we end up that we would have never seen ourselves doing. So
I think it's so true. I mean, I think you got to be careful, say, do what you love doing, because that could get,
right.
oh, I love video games. I'm going to play video games all day.
Yeah.
But it's that idea of, if you walk into each day, each year, kind of open-handed,
yeah,
to what God may have for you, it may be, in fact, it's time to leave that big company for the small company. It may be time to leave the small company and go into a big company. I mean, who knows what it may be, but to not have those blinders on to, this is me and this, I will always be this way, but just really be open-handed to it. And I think in the process, like in my situation, there came a moment that I was like, I want to be a coach, but I didn't have the guts to do it.
Yeah.
Because I had identity into being a corporate guy. I had identity into the job. I even though there's really never security in a corporate paycheck, there was a sense of security that I had of, hey, I got a big paycheck.
At least I know what I'm making. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if I go to coaching, I'm starting at zero. And where am I going to find the clients? So I think part of the journey is also just kind of that softening of our heart and opening to allow it to actually work, like me breaking free of my identity of being a corporate guy, me starting to see that, hey, there is an opportunity out there to coach. And so I think there's also a purpose for the process.
Yeah, man. So identity, that's a big thing. So I'll tell you what, let me run a few ads and then let's get into the identity and then really the stuff of winning at home. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. So Strong Dads wants to thank Kreimer's Beer House for sponsoring today's Strong Dads podcast. The Beer House was started in 1982 by the Kreimer family. Since that time, they have been a Cincinnati favorite. So if you're looking for an incredible meal in an incredible setting, you have to try the Kreimer's Beer House, located on Route 128 in Cleves, Ohio. Also, we'd like to welcome a new sponsor to the Strong Dads podcast. We'd like to welcome Casey's Outdoor Solutions. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts of every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and a value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or give them a call at 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home. All right. Let's talk about identity for a second. Can we do that?
Absolutely. Love it.
So one of the things that I found in Strong Dads and the work that I do with men on a daily basis is how we identify as men. And one of the things that I have been guilty of, and you have brought this up, you identified as a corporate guy. I see guys all the time identify by the size of their paycheck, by the size of their muscles and how fit they are, by the size of their truck or the speed of their car, by the size of their home, by the hot looking babe that's walking next to them. And so it really, I say that because identity was a big deal that when I started wrestling with these guys. So here I am dealing with kids that are falling apart at school, and I'm calling up Dad, I need to talk with you, and get dads to come in, and very typically would be very, very protective and defensive of how they were identifying themselves. So that was, in other words, an area that if I knocked on that, boy, they were very sensitive. Like if I were to call you out and say, dude, you're more worried about your paycheck or your corporate status than you are about your kids. I mean, typically I was able to be confrontational, but that oftentimes, and so identity is so big, and it made me start to think, how have we lost our identity like this? How have we gotten so far off the idea of understanding that the most important identity we have is to be a child of God, and the second one is to be a husband, and the third is to be a father, so to speak. And so help me out. You talk about your identity. What are you seeing out there? And let's work through that a little bit. I think that's a really cool thing that you talked several times about your identity in the corporate world.
Yeah, I completely agree. It is the biggest kryptonite for leaders out there is identity. And everything you mentioned of where identity, except for being a beloved son or daughter of God, all of those identity pieces are temporary. And so what happens, no matter what any of those you listed off, the job title, what happens when you get fired? What happens when you retire? I even have some clients that I'm working with now that are transitioning from, into their retirement, and
Right.
what that's doing to them. So if you tie it to a job, your job, in fact, will change. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
We all will retire. And so that's going to happen. And so that's a gamble. The truck, the car, those will all get older each day, right?
They all
And
rust, don't they?
there's a newer one, there's rust.
Yeah.
The lady on your arm. I mean, that all, it's all temporary. Now, even for men, taking our questions to a woman is unfair and not fulfilling and will not work. So if we find our identity and who's wrapped around us and in that family piece, if we're going to them to answer the questions of our life and who we are, what happens in the day when they're in a bad mood? What happens in the day when, they aren't there to meet those needs mentally for us? And then we start to question who we are. Maybe then we go find another woman, or we go find another car. And so that's the challenge with all those identity places we take it to, is because they're all temporary.
Yeah.
And when they go away, then we're left kind of with nothing. And it's like, who are we then? And so that's why we all have to put our identity in something that's permanent, which is being a beloved child of God. And then once we understand our identity, from there can flow our mission. Just like when we see in Jesus's life, he doesn't really start his ministry until he's, roughly 30 years old, when he gets told that he is a beloved son.
Yeah.
Then from there, that's the cool part of the Gospels. That's all the stories we know, all the miracles for the next 3 years. So once he understood his identity, then he went and did all those, casting out demons and miracles and pieces like that. So same thing for us. We've got to figure out our identity in something permanent. And then from there we go, coach, be a teacher, be corporate, be a husband, be a father.
Right, man. I mean, that is such a great point, and that's kind of gets to, really what we're talking about. The identity has to be long-term permanent. It has to be, otherwise, like you said, it changes, and then you're chasing the wind. And so what a good point to start with. Like, we have to, and so what if I'm a guy who, because you're a corporate coach, so I'm sure a lot of guys you're talking to don't really have a faith, maybe, or have no understanding of God. And so to try to pull them into, okay, well, what is permanent? How do you shift them into thinking like that?
Yeah. My client base, from a percentage standpoint, is probably 70% believers, because I think I do attract some of that from the standpoint of the book and podcasts that are out there and my messaging. But I do have 30% that aren't believers, or I can't talk about faith at the direction of either them or the company. And so when it does come to identity, though, I still can, without saying God, I can really remind them of the challenge of putting their identity in something temporary.
Yeah.
Whatever it may have been, the fact that their job title has changed and they're now in this new role.
Yeah.
And that's why we're now talking. I'm your executive coach because you're in this new role. So know that roles change. Don't put your identity in this role. Don't put your identity into this company, because it's going to change, just like it did for you to even get to this moment. There was changes.
Yeah.
And so you start to see things, wheels turning in people's mind with that.
Yeah.
And then so I really help people try to also get to a purpose. Like, what is your purpose? And through that, there'll be some pieces that I'm praying and hoping land to some identity. And most of the time, you'd be surprised, Hutch, even in a non-faith discussion, the truth is the truth. And so people can, even though they may not have the answer by the time I'm done working with them, because I couldn't be direct to the point during that time, I believe a seed has been planted.
Yeah, seed planting, that's for sure. So you then came to, as part of your coaching, came to the book of Win at Home First. Tell me about that. I've not read that book yet. Okay, so tell me a little bit about Win at Home First.
Yeah, well, you're missing out. It gives you something to do over break, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yep. So basically, Win Home First. I mean, I never had a book in my mind or an idea of doing one, but I was hired an executive coach to help companies that I was hired to help with vision and values, to help with improving their culture as a company. You know, is it a healthy and productive culture, or busy and toxic? All these kind of corporate things. And as I would talk, there's one particular conversation kind of got the ball rolling. He was a president of a company. And when we got on the one-on-one call, and we actually, you know, like these Zoom calls, just like you and I are on, when you have these one-on-one calls, it's really cool how walls can get broke down pretty darn fast.
Yeah.
It's neat. It's different than a phone call. And so we were on this Zoom call, and I was asking some questions about family, and the enthusiasm was going down. You know, when we talked about the business, there was tons of excitement. It was, you know, new products being launched and highest revenue. I mean, all good news. And family, the energy goes down. And there's also no mention of the wife. And I remember him saying that they'd been married for 25 plus years during our discovery session. So I kind of asked a pointed question about the wife. I mean, you know, just kind of like, you know, where was she this weekend? Or I don't remember exactly the question was. Enthusiasm kind of goes even further down.
Yeah.
Well, I literally got kind of a prompting, you know, from the spirit to go into this.
Yeah.
So I basically just said, hey, in order for us to fix the work problems, the vision, values, the culture, we are going to have to work on home first. Because as the leader goes, so goes the company. So if you're really going to lead a sustainable change in your company, if you are really going to have a clear and compelling vision and those meaningful values for people to follow, you yourself have got to be worth following.
Yeah.
And so we have got to win at home first. Yeah. Is that okay if we focus at home as well as focusing on the business? He said yes. And it was an awesome testimony and win. And so I said that phrase then, and then I just started to say it. And then eventually it became from nudging and quiet time to write a book. And some clients say, you need to write a book. And so that was the title of the book.
That's
Win
cool.
First.
That's cool. Well, let's get into, I'm sure, some of the things that you talk about in coaching, but as well as that the book talk about. So, you know, what are your best recommendations for guys, just to, like, when somebody contacts you, what is your best recommendation for how do you start and get moving with them? We seem to be cutting out here. Are you alive?
I'm alive. Repeat that question.
Okay, so you start with somebody, they're brand new. What are your best moves and recommendations to get started? How do you know where to go with somebody?
Yeah, in what regard? Are you thinking, I mean, I guess being strong dads, or is it the identity piece, or just in what piece? Because
yeah, so when you start to work with somebody, let's just say we got a younger professional guy that's coming in to see you as an executive coach. How do you approach them first to see if they are winning at home? What is your first move on that?
You know, kind of just start asking questions. We got some exercises, we got some tools that we'll kind of do, but really at the end of the day, it's just having conversations. It's just starting, like, what's the current reality?
Yeah.
And in the conversations, it could be a little bit of, when was the last time you went on a date with your wife? And some guys, it's so easy to tell that they do date their wife. They're like, a couple weeks ago. Or because of COVID, we don't go out, but we definitely make sure we have time and, hang out in this room of the house, have a bottle of wine, and the kids are, over here in this part of the house.
Yeah.
But then there's other guys, it is like, let's see. Man, I've not had it, I don't know, 6 months.
Yeah.
right away I can tell what's happening from the marital standpoint. And then usually some questions in on the kids is, hey, what do you like to do with your kids, or what are some fun activities, and just kind of asking questions and trying to get a sense of their response. And you can tell from their response if they are an intentional father or are they pretty passive and reactive.
How well do they receive you checking into their home life, especially if you're going to be asking them to alter some of that? Because, here they are, if their identity is in the corporate world, have they always understood that they have to win at home first? So how well do they receive you poking into the home life?
The clients that say yes to working with me, they understand. They are humble to hear and receive, and then they're gonna have the courage to go implement and try things out.
Good. Yeah.
The individual that talks to me, and I think even in my questions in the discovery session, as I'm asking, if they're stinging a little bit, they won't call back because they don't want anyone getting too close to them.
That's interesting.
And is it pride? Is it scared of what are they going to find? Do they think I'm going to uncover some porn addiction they've got, or I have no idea, what goes in on their mind. I know in my own life, if someone was poking around in me 10 years ago, I would have said, step off.
That's right.
But now I'm open to it, because what I also know is you can't grow closer to God. You can't grow closer to your spouse. You can't grow closer to your kids, to your dear friends, if you've got skeletons in the closet.
Yeah.
If you've got these dark places that are there, and I did it in my life. I tried to do all these things, and I knew I had a couple bad spots. And I just like, hey, God, you can have all of me except this part over here. Let's talk about everything except this part over here. Matter of fact, I may tithe a little bit more this month because I do have this part over here, and you're kind of getting close to it.
Man, that is so true. Yeah. So the transparency, right?
Yeah, the transparency. So once I became vulnerable about the brokenness in my life, I noticed other guys are like, all right, I can be vulnerable as well.
Yeah.
And, vulnerability is a strength. I know there's guys listening that think it's a weakness. And unfortunately, I think that they'll be slow to grow.
Yeah. Well, I can't just agree with you more. So on Saturday mornings, I run what we call Strong Dads, and I'm a personal trainer as well. And so I have a gym here at the office. So Saturday mornings is nothing but a group of men coming in and working out. And I used fitness as a way to bring in the strong dudes, right? So yeah, I can lift. It is amazing to me how the vulnerability, as you had mentioned, to peel away the weakness. Man, that dude's over there, pumping iron like there's nobody's business. But all of a sudden, you start to pull back a layer of a certain part of their life. And the guys that grow are the guys that keep coming back and staying. And it is so cool to watch that. And I think part of you and I, as part of being coaches, is, man, right off the bat, I try to expose my vulnerability, because I know that's what helps them to see that. I'm older than a lot of the guys that come in, and I just peel back and go, hey, dude, quit hiding, man. Are you serious? You got no mask around here. I've got more garbage on you. I'm twice your age, back off. And when you give guys permission to be vulnerable, man, that is really neat to see. So that's cool that you see that. And so.
Absolutely. And the other thing for anyone listening is, I have been on, in my coaching calls, as you have too, with people that when I first started, I was a little intimidated, like, oh man, this guy runs a huge company, or,
right.
Podcast interviewing this guy who, runs the largest company that I've ever been this close to, and talking with somebody.
Yeah.
Or, whatever it could be. And I realized that all of us are broken.
Yes. Yeah.
Everyone is trying to figure out, how do I be a better father? How do I be a better husband? How do I be a better leader?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is struggling. So I think for any of that listener is just kind of thinking, well, no one's got it like me, or no bull.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. I've said a long time ago, because I could be easily intimidated by somebody of power influence like that. And I was like, you know what? We are all broken dudes. And the bigger the guy, usually the more facade he's got on. And when I say bigger, I don't mean physical
I know what you mean. Yeah. I think this is so true.
Yeah.
Yep.
What is so what are some of the trends that you're seeing in the corporate world? What are some of the trends that you're seeing in leaders that they're dealing with that pulls them from family?
I think the biggest trend right now is people don't know how to manage their day in order to separate work from home. And so there was a article that came out from a study that basically said the workday is now 48 minutes longer for people being away, working 48 minutes longer per day than what it used to be. But there's other things that talk about the output, the production is not that much better.
Right.
Yep. What's happening to so many people is they are working longer days. And remember, there's no commute now. So they're showing up to their office, whether it's in a basement or it's a third floor bedroom or it's a daughter's bedroom, to work. They're working, starting earlier and then almost going longer. But not necessarily always working either, right? The laptop may be open, but then they go and take care of something for virtual learning for a kid. And then they come back and they do some work. And so it just, what's happening is people don't have a good divide. Mm-hmm. And which I totally get. It's challenging times, but the reality is all of us have got to put in some disciplines.
Yeah.
Or it'll just creep away. And so, if it's you and your spouse talking about, hey, I have to work from 8 to 9, you can have the 9 to 10 shift in the house, or whatever those boundaries need to be. That was just a random example, not saying that's the right answer, but setting up boundaries. And then that's one piece. And once I could go in, there's a whole webinar and teaching I can do on this. But the whole thing is, hey, set up boundaries for your day, first and foremost, because work is just drifting into all part of the day.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest piece, Hutch, I would say, is that there's really no control of the day. We've just said, hey, I got to work from home, so I'm on call all the time. And my pushback is to set up boundaries to work, to be focused. You'll get more done in that short amount of time than if you're just, kind of trying to multitask throughout all of it. I read an article years ago that I still use that basically says multitasking, your IQ drops as much as if you smoke pot.
Right.
Because you're bouncing back and forth.
Yeah.
And so I find that so interesting. And so the big one is lack of disciplines on their day. And the second big one is this guilt that I always have to answer the phone or email and reply within minutes. Otherwise, my bosses are going to think I'm slacking.
Yeah.
And I think that's bull, because when you used to work in your company, tower or office building, you didn't reply that fast because you were in a meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
You may have gone a couple of hours without returning that phone call or returning that email because you were in meetings. But so you gave yourself that, it was a legit excuse, but you gave yourself an excuse. And so, but when now in your home, we don't give ourselves that grace anymore. Mm-hmm. We have this guilt that they're going to think I'm taking a nap. They're going to think I'm out shooting baskets with my son. They're going to think I'm out doing this.
Yeah.
And so it's getting the disciplines for your day. And then, that idea of, hey, give yourself some grace that you don't have to respond every single second.
Yeah, that's good. Good stuff. Cory, but you don't understand. You don't understand. Yeah. My boss makes me work 60 hours a week, and that's what my workload is. There's just no way. If I don't work this much, so I have to bring work home at night. I have to work on the weekends. Cory, you just don't understand. That's what it takes for me to get the job done. What's your response?
I would like to know a little bit more about that story. But in all seriousness, for a variety of things. Because does this individual have any direct reports? And if they do, and give a couple scenarios here of these, if they have direct reports, then it's a team. How do you get your team involved? I'm seeing a lot of leaders not delegating because no one can do it as good as I can.
Yeah.
No one can do it as good as, so therefore I'm not going to delegate to them because I've got to do it.
Yep.
Well, not necessarily. You're the lid of the organization. If you're doing all the work and no one else is, you're only going to rise so high.
Yeah.
The other is your boss really watching every 60 hours? No, he's not. It's just you. I can honestly say this. There's two different kind of laws. One is like this Parkinson's law. It's the idea that our work will expand or contract the time allowed. So if you are given 8 hours to do a 6-hour task, you will take all 8 hours.
Yep.
You'll start to work, then you'll get up and you'll go get coffee, you'll come back, then you'll I need to look at my Facebook feed. Wonder if I got any more likes on that post. Yeah, well, man. Oh, at ESPN, wonder what the games are looking like this weekend. All right, I better get back to work.
Yeah,
I better get back to work. And then you do some work, and then it's the exact same thing over and over. So, what happens is you've taken that 6-hour workload and you've expanded it into 8 hours. Now, it's called Horseman corollary to Parkinson's law. Is the exact opposite is also true, and that is that your work can contract to fit the time allowed. Some people are listening saying, "There's no way." Yes, it is. Any day before vacation, you have experienced this.
Amazing.
You have jammed in your 10 hours of work into an 8-hour day or whatever the right numbers are.
Yeah.
But you fire off those emails that you haven't been able to get to all week. You make that difficult phone call you couldn't make. You make the edits to the Word document and send it to your coworker to work on while you're on vacation. We get so much done that Friday before we leave on vacation. So we know for a fact we can contract. We also can admit that it can expand. So you take those two different things. I would sit and talk with that individual. Are you sure you have 60 hours of work week, or are you taking 40 and you're allowing it to expand to 60?
Yeah.
Let's talk there. Is that true? What are you working on?
Yeah.
And depending on where they're at in the organization, there's things I talk about, like, are those tasks still needed? What a task was needed in 2019 may not still be needed in 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
No one may be looking at that report anymore.
Yeah.
That you've been cranking out, and so there's so many ways to slice it.
That is such a great point. I think time management is really just so critical. I run into so many guys that just talk how busy they are. And I'm not going to say that they're not busy, but I think how they go about busyness sometimes is really probably the focus there. What about how much do you run into the actual corporate structure that is I know one specific company that I've dealt with that has very strict guidelines on how quickly you need to return an email, a text. Emails are to be answered. There's 7 days a week. And a statement has actually been made to the employees about that. Do you run into that kind of stuff at the corporate level? Which to me really kind of says, I don't really care about your personal life. Your business life is most important here. Do you run into that?
I personally worked for it. I mean, so I know it. I personally worked for a situation like that. And, that's up to you as a whoever's listening, and to myself is, if you truly want other people's priorities to become your priorities, then go for it.
Yeah.
You do that, but there will be toxic leaders, poor leadership decisions. There always will be out there, those type of individuals. And you just got to choose, is that something that you want to participate in or move on?
Yeah.
And, that's the reverse reality, because it is difficult. I was in a tough situation like that. It was very, very frustrating, but my wife could always tell when I got off the phone with that particular boss. Did you talk to, you must have talked to so-and-so today. Yep. Like, it just brought out the worst in me.
Yeah.
And in those demands, and I would see that I had an appointment with that individual on my calendar for that day, and just leading up to it, be like, oh man, 2:00. Oh my gosh, this is going to be awful.
Yeah.
And man, it was so freeing to get away from it. So, for anybody, you don't have to stay where you're at. I know it seems like you do, and you've got liabilities and responsibilities, but if that's you, I'd start to pray through and think through what could be next.
Yeah, it's
Actually doing something about it, and not just sitting there and say, oh, poor me.
yeah,
No, do something about it. Update your LinkedIn.
yeah.
Update your resume. Start looking. Pray for people to come into your life that are looking for the skill set that you offer. But don't accept someone else's the priorities to be yours if that's not how you want to live your life. There's other bosses out there that would love to have you work for them.
Yeah. I try to help folks understand if this is where you are and you see no end, or is this a season? So sometimes I do see guys go through a season, like maybe, at their workplace or whatever, they're on a particular project and it's going gangbusters and there's a hard deadline. And, for the next 6 weeks, it's just going to be crazy. If I know that that's a season, I can get my wife and everybody to wrap their head around that and say, okay, we can do this, versus the season never ends. This 6 weeks turns in, well, it's really just what we do. Every day is miserable this way. And like you just said, the idea of, you can be a victim to that. But at Strong Dads here, we really talk about, you need to own it, dude. You need to own that. If you're whining and complaining about that, and the rest of your life is feeling that, such as your wife and your marriage and your kids, that one's on you. You either have the hard conversation with your boss, or if that doesn't work, then it's time, as you said, to update the LinkedIn page and to look. But which is so empowering. I always tell guys, hey, that's empowering, that you take the initiative to say, no, I'm better than this. My life and family deserve better.
Yep, man, that's you brought up some great points there, Hutch. I will get a lot of individuals who come to me stuck. Like, I don't like my job. I want to move on. And so much of the discussion is talking to them about it's a season. I'll use the language, hey, while you're in the waiting room, what are you going to do to prepare yourself until your number's called for the next assignment?
Yeah.
And have them think through what it looks like. In my example that I gave of my boss, my situation, in a frustrated, quiet time, I just heard this audible noise of stay. And when I heard that, the amount of peace that I had with it, I was like, well, stay, wait, how long?
Yeah.
How long is this? This is awful. How long is this? But when I had that of stay, I communicate to my wife, and to your point, it's almost like you were part of our conversation was, all right, we'll stay. We'll figure this out. The way I went to each phone call was different with them. Because I knew it was just a season. I knew that this was my assignment until another date, that I showed up differently. I showed up better. So I could own it. It's a mindset thing. If, before I heard the word stay, it was a mindset of I am the victim. And I was walking into that and dreading it. And this individual didn't change. It was my mindset that changed, knowing that, and then, I started having all these different scriptures in there, that God puts a certain authority into our place at a time, that servant leadership, like all this stuff started hitting me as well. And it's like, and so I learned a lot during that time after I heard that word stay, that made me a better leader and, quite frankly, a better coach, and even a better, kind of understanding of the relationship with God and what that looks like.
Yeah. So, multiple times here in our conversation, we've made reference to God. And how do you, when you're talking with somebody, and like you said, they know that you're faith-based in a lot of your work, how do you go about getting them to kind of come to the revelation that you've come to, like, I've got to listen to God, versus, yeah, no, I go to church on Sunday or whatever, but we, a lot of times we compartmentalize God. And a lot of times we just compartmentalize God, and we only kind of hear him when we want to hear him. How do you get guys to really start seeking God out?
Yeah. And even for the listener who doesn't believe in God, I've had clients who don't believe in God. What I am driving a lot, with all my clients, because I've seen it change my life, is the need for solitude. Is to journal and reflect. For me, it's spending time in the Word. But for somebody else who doesn't read scripture, I'm still having them sit in there and reflect. Why did you get angry at that meeting? Why did you lose your cool with your kids? Why are you envious of that over there? And what are you grateful for? Like all these different things, I have them do it because what we do know is true is when we are in that solitude, for most of all, we're connecting with God. Some just don't necessarily know what they're connecting with.
Right.
So if I can get individuals to spend more time in solitude, more time in running or cycling or yoga or working out or whatever that is that allows them to be thinking and connecting, then that's a win. And so for me, I know in my own life the days that I have a good day, I usually start in scripture, and I was kind of, never cease praying throughout the day, as Paul talks about.
Mm-hmm.
When I have bad days, bad weeks, if I were to look, I will be like, you know what? I didn't get my quiet time like I should. I slept in. I was staying up too late. I would start doing my quiet time and I hop right into emails. Mm-hmm. Instead, whatever it may be. But my best days are my most creative times, my most times at peace, my most ability to be present with my family are when I am consistently in the Word, journaling, and praying.
Yeah. It's, what you look for is what you find is, and the idea there, I've heard the phrase many, many times, pray without ceasing. Right. And that really, those just were words. I don't really know what that meant. And I went through a really challenging time in my own life many years back. And it was challenging enough that I had to give up. I dropped to my knees. Because I was just being defeated so badly. And it all of a sudden started to make sense because the only thing that I actually had was the rope to God called prayer, and that was the only thing I was hanging on to. And so what happened to me in that situation was understanding what praying without ceasing really meant for me. Like everything I did, because I was in such a scattered and just splintered area in my life, everything I had to connect to God, because I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust where I was in life. I didn't trust how things were going. And so I don't know how guys do it that don't understand that they have to humble themselves and go to God. God, what do you think about this? God, talk to me here. God, lead me. God, I believe in you. You're going to carry me. And that became a practice of mine. And it's funny, I actually had then the conscious thought, probably a year and a half or so down the road from that time, I had the conscious thought, oh my gosh, I am praying without ceasing. Like everything I do, I run through God. And, so to take it out of cliche and put it into practice is just kind of like what you said. Like you have to create the hard habits. You have to do the things that even on some days you might be reading or writing something and it's kind of blah, 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 but the habit's there and you know where to go when all of a sudden the battle comes and you're like, hey, I've been trained in this. I know where to get peace. I know where to get resolution. So I really appreciate you going down that road of just putting that as a priority. It's definitely helped me.
Yeah, that never ceased praying for me too. When I first heard it, I thought, what? No, how do I work if I'm on my hands and knees all day long?
Am I going to be a monk or what?
Yeah. No, I mean, for me, as I learned it, it's just like, it's praying before I hop on this podcast. That just a quick, hey, Lord, I want to, bring glory to you, not myself. Yeah. And when the podcast's over, it's thanks. And then, just kind of moving. So it's just like these quick line of, that we're in relationship with God throughout the day. It's not just a Sunday check-in or even a Monday, even a morning check-in through prayer, but instead it's something that's, throughout. We're talking a lot about this faith piece or God piece. There's a secular book out there called Lead Yourself First. And it talks about the decline in American corporate leadership today is due to lack of solitude. And so it wasn't even about a God thing. It's just a solitude piece. And right. I think if you were to unpack and talk to those authors, they may say, yeah, because we're trying, because it gets people to God, but it's not in the book.
Right.
And Robert Iger who ran Disney for whatever it was, 25, 30 years, he talks about one of the key reasons for success is he gets up at 4:15 every morning to do his quiet time. And he states that he knows that morning, that time's not for everyone, but he doesn't know how he would be able to do his thing in peace and quiet if he didn't have that in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent stuff there. Well, hey, I appreciate very much just your conversation and just your realness in doing this. And so let's move through just a little bit. Let's just talk about um, how you can help a guy who's living two different worlds. He behaves one way at home and one way in the corporate world, and is causing tension in him. Okay. So in other words, I go to work and I'm just thriving and doing my deal, and I come home and I'm a jerk. I'm nasty. How do you see that very often? I see that frequently in the men I deal with. And the wife sometimes says, I just wish you'd stay at work if this is what you are when you come home.
Yeah.
What do you do when you see guys that they become two different people in the places that they are?
Yeah. Well, when I talk to a lot of people is, your day does not end when you walk through that front door. Mm-hmm. Your day is over when your head hits that pillow.
Yeah.
So you've got to lead well at work, and you got to lead well at home.
Great.
You have allowed yourself to let down your guard, if you will, when you get home, and you take out your, the reality is you take out your anger out on your kids or on your spouse. The reality is you're probably putting up a front all day long. You're acting a little bit outside of who you are. You're more of a chameleon. You're trying to be the fun guy or the funny guy or the smartest guy in the room. I don't know what, imposter syndrome, that individual's putting on. And I'm guilty of it too. I've done it as well. So it's not throwing stones. It's, I can speak this way because I've been there. Mm-hmm. But there's something you're doing in the day that quite honestly is getting you out of your normal self. It takes a lot of energy. It is exhausting to be an imposter. Mm-hmm. And then you come home and it's a safe place for you, and you just let it go. That the built up tension of the day, you just yelled at your kid from. The built up stress of they're going to find out I'm an imposter. You send that energy toward your wife. And so my first and foremost conversation with that individual is, just stop. Yeah. Who are you? And you gotta win the entire day, not just the 8 to 5 part. It's the entire day. And this is what we talked about at the very beginning of this call. Don't do this imposter self just for a temporary job. That job is going away. Mm-hmm. At some point. You will get replaced. There will be a merger, or something's going to happen. There'll be a change in your role. Do not trash your family just for this temporary job. Because the reality is the family may not be around either.
Yeah. When I see that, I go just kind of down that road that you just talked about. I'm like, hey, not that I want you to be a jerk anywhere that you are, but first and foremost, I need you to be a champ at home. Yep. Because like you said, that's the one that doesn't change. Everything else is going to be temporary. Yeah, if I can get you to be a champ at home and then work to get you to be better at work, then that's awesome. Okay. Yep. Ultimately, we're trying to get the balance so that we're a good dude wherever we are. That But when I recognize that I'm being two different people, like you said, it's because it sucks all my energy out. Yep. To be able to continue to sustain. And if that is the case, then something's got to be changed. Maybe I'm like you said, I'm living the imposter life, or I'm under so much pressure that I don't know how else to survive at work or whatever. But yeah, I got to win at home first, like you said. That's awesome stuff.
Yeah. And we create the cultures that we lead. I mean, so if you don't like your home life, I'm sorry, but you created that culture. So right. Your 6-year-old boy did not create that culture. Your 15-year-old girl did not create that culture. You, as a spiritual leader of the home, have created that culture as a strong dad. So if you don't like your home, work to clean it up.
Yeah.
Just like you do work to clean up your team at work. You figure, it's what's the vision and values of our team? What's the cadence of our communication? The exact same things we do for business, we've got to do for home. So what's the vision and values for the home? What's the cadence look like? Are you going on dates with your kids? Are you going on dates with your family? Are you being open or vulnerable? Are you having open communication? Like everything that we preach at work. Yeah. If your home's toxic, I would start to bring in some of those same ideas into the home to start switching it up.
Yeah. Great stuff. Well, Cory, is there any one last parting information, advice, suggestions that you would like to give to our strong dads out there?
I think no matter where you're at, no matter what was said today that stung you a little bit, do not hear it as, condemnation.
No.
But it's an invitation just to grow.
Yeah.
Everyone is in a similar situation one way or another to what you are. So just look to start implementing, making some changes. Do not accept the victim mentality. Do not accept that you're stuck and it always will be this way. Your house will always be toxic. Your work team will always be toxic. No, you can totally make the change. So if you're listening, and you just grab one thing and start implementing it, and then work on the second one.
Yeah. So important. You got to be coachable, right? I mean, you got to be coachable.
Heck yeah.
So, great point. Cory, I want to thank you for your time here on the Strong Dads podcast. How can people get in touch with you or get a hold of your book, your offerings of teachings that you have? How can they get a hold of that?
Yeah, sweet. Well, Hutch, thanks a lot for having me on. The book, Went Home First, is on Amazon, Audible, and so that's available. I, too, have a Went Home First podcast where I'm just interviewing leaders to see how they're doing it. And so that's been helpful to some. But then Cory M, as in Michael Carlson, is my website. So go to CoryMCarlson.com, check it out, and love to just, I'll do a free discovery session from, for anyone from here, just to see what makes sense, if working together does or does not. So love to do that.
All right. That sounds great. I thank you for offering that. And hopefully some of our listeners will take you up on that and start to get their head straight and their family straight. So again, I just want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Kramer's Beer House for coming alongside of us, and also our new sponsor of Casey's Outdoor Solutions. So we want to thank all of those guys for coming alongside of us and helping us do what we do here at Rock Solid Families and Strong Dads. Cory, I want to thank you again for your time. Get out there and make it a great day and enjoy those holidays we got coming up.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Hutch.
Hey, this is Kyle Crawford from Strong Dads. Strong Dads podcast would love to thank the Kramer's Beer House for coming alongside of us. The Kramer's Beer House was started in 1982 by the Kramer family, and since that time, they have definitely become a Cincinnati favorite. So if you're looking for an incredible meal in an incredible setting, definitely go down to Route 128 and check out the Kramer's Beer House.